RTD blames a drowsy driver for a train derailment in Golden. State lawmakers had a chance to set harsher penalties for unlicensed truck drivers after a deadly crash. Instead, they might set the most lenient ones in the nation.
The last time I checked, I live in America, and I am innocent until
that's why there's going to be a recall election.
A small town with some big drama. Tempers flare in Dacono, where multiple city councilors facing recall want a say in whether the city should fund the election. And one girl's greatest wish is a far cry from Disneyland.
Brett, since she was a very, very small child, has been obsessed with the trash truck.
A community comes together to make her wish come true. Tonight on Next. What's outside your window right now? The way this afternoon has gone could be anything. Rain, hail, maybe snow. And if you're near Keansburg, you might have seen Colorado's first tornado of the year. A viewer named Beth sent us this video of a landspout forming just north of Buckley Space Force Base this afternoon. It was clearly visible as far away as the Denver airport. Keansburg was also under a tornado warning for about a half an hour this afternoon, but that was lifted shortly after 3 o'clock. But the weather's not done weathering yet. Let's check in with Danielle for more on what to expect tonight.
Yeah, Steve, it's been a wild afternoon to say the very least. Classic springtime storm pushing across the state, delivering heavy snowfall up in the mountains and a pretty dreary and soggy afternoon across the Denver metro area. You can see a brief little lull, but dark, ominous skies across downtown. The snow still coming down across the Eisenhower Johnson tunnels, and that's where we have our winter storm warnings. They will continue through tomorrow midday. This is going to be for areas above 7,500 feet where we're looking at 8 to 16 inches. Even more snow the further south you go across the Central Mountains, the San Greta Cristos, the Wet Mountains, even around Colorado Springs. We could see about 4 to 12 inches, I should say. And Douglas, Elbert County also included in that warning. I think you're going to be on the lower end, but still, if you're traveling further to the west, the winter weather advisory is still in place through tomorrow too. The storm system is a monster. You can see it sitting and spinning across southwestern Colorado, delivering so much needed rain and snow here to Colorado. As we zoom in here to Denver, you can see some pretty heavy rain showers right there around I-76, the south side of the Denver metro area too. We are just getting this storm system going as we still have another about 12 to 18 hours to go. As we zoom in here to the Front Range, 11 o'clock or so tonight, we're still looking at that rain across the city with the rain snow line just to the south into Douglas and Elbert counties. That's why we anticipate Castle Rock as well as Parker, Elizabeth seeing a couple of inches of snow. By about lunchtime tomorrow, all of this moving out. The statewide view, 11 o'clock tonight, still heavy snowfall up in the mountains. Look at all this rain pushing across southeastern Colorado overnight into tomorrow. Some fantastic rain as well as moisture that's going to be moving in, and that is going to really help them out as far as the drought is concerned. Tomorrow we're back to the mid-50s, partly cloudy skies in the afternoon as that storm system has fully pushed out. High pressure is going to push back in, and that means we're going to be looking at a drying trend coming our way. Upper 60s on Thursday before another storm, Steve, moves in early Friday.
All right, TG, thank you. RTD says a sleepy train operator is likely to blame for a W line train hopping off the tracks at the Jeffco Government Center last month. When a train derails, RTD has to file a corrective action report with the state's Public Utilities Commission. In the report filed this afternoon, RTD says that they figured out the driver likely fell asleep before the impact that Saturday morning, and that excessive speed then caused the train to blow past the bump stop at the end of the line. In response to that crash, RTD wants to start a fatigue awareness campaign for operators, make it part of their recertification program. They're also going to evaluate when shifts start and how long they last. Jeffco Government Station is still closed as crews repair the damage there. Should be open by the end of April. 4 people have filed a lawsuit against a Denver police officer accused of shooting into a crowded street in Lodo last summer where 6 bystanders were hurt. First lawsuit was filed last month by another bystander. This new suit was filed overnight by 4 people who claim that they were seriously injured by shrapnel from 2 bullets the officer fired. Bailey Alexander, Yakalo Wildehuwit, Willis Smalls IV, and Mark Bass say that Officer Brandon Ramos, recklessly fired into the crowd while aiming for a man who had pulled out a gun. A grand jury indicted Ramos, calling his decision to shoot not legally justified. They called it reckless, unreasonable, and unnecessary. Wildehuwit was on a date with his longtime girlfriend that night when he was hit. His humerus was shattered, leaving him needing surgery, several metal plates. We spoke to him just a few days after the shooting last July.
I have this anger and this unjust of feeling unsafe
when I never thought I would be in this situation. You know, I felt like throughout my life I followed the rules, tried to be as a proper citizen as I can. And for this to happen is just unbelievable.
The three other plaintiffs had extensive injuries as well. One woman was shot in the right shoulder and upper right arm. Another was hit on the side of his left foot. The fourth was hit in the chest, causing a burn. And on top of these lawsuits, Ramos is also facing charges, 14 counts, including second and third degree assault. Now, when the crime doesn't match the punishment, it turns out you can't enforce the penalty for doing something wrong. For 2 years now, truck drivers behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound semi without the proper license couldn't be punished under state law. Well, that's about to change, but it could make Colorado's new law one of the most lenient in the nation. Here's Mark Salinger.
There's a certain expectation that every driver behind the wheel of a fully loaded semi has a proper license. But if they don't, there's no enforceable penalty under state law in Colorado.
Makes it unenforceable because the judges are really bound by law to dismiss those citations.
For the past 2 years, Major J.P. Burt at Colorado State Patrol knows his troopers haven't been writing tickets to drivers without a valid commercial driver's license, or CDL. Instead, they rely on inspections and compliance reviews to keep bad truckers off the road.
The real goal is to work with legislature, get the fines and penalties corrected to the right level so that officers can start writing tickets again.
Back in 2021, the legislature made changes to the penalties for certain laws under a push for misdemeanor reform. The penalty for a driver without a CDL was decreased from a misdemeanor to a traffic infraction. That's where the problems begin.
What they didn't do is reset the fine schedule. So judges are put in a precarious position under the criminal justice system to apply misdemeanor level penalties to a traffic infraction level violation.
That doesn't work. Which brings us to the state capitol today.
But at least we have this first step, which due to an error in how the laws came together, we didn't have for now a couple of years.
Skylar McKinley is with AAA. A new bill in the state legislature will make the penalties actually enforceable. A Senate version increases it to a misdemeanor. The House version keeps it at a traffic violation. AAA wants the stricter penalty, which likely won't pass.
The good news is we can now make those enforcement actions. The bad news is this is probably not enough.
There now will likely be at least something on the books to hold people accountable under the law.
We really do have a responsibility to democracy to align the penalties with the crime.
If lawmakers pass the version of the bill leaving the punishment at a traffic infraction, it would make it one of the most lenient in the nation. There's serious concern that paying a $115 fine won't deter bad companies from putting bad drivers on the road without a valid license. Industry groups supporting stricter penalties say paying these fines will simply become a cost of doing business for these dangerous companies that put unqualified drivers on the road.
And we know why so many companies are paying attention to this, right? So many truck driving, or so many in the truck industry are paying attention to this. But all of us should be too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's on the road driving next to semis. Just this past, coming up on a year ago right now, there was a terrible crash up in Weld County, Colorado that killed 5 people. The truck slammed into a car, and that driver was driving without a valid commercial driver's license.
On the road with all the rest of us. Mark Salinger reporting. Thank you. Well, Colorado's hottest city council is Dacono, located just south of Frederick along I-25. This public body has everything from recalls to abrupt firings to name calling, now even a CBI investigation. In February, at the same public meeting, they honored the city manager for 20 years of service, then they fired him. Now 2 members of that council are facing a recall over that, and a CBI investigation found many of them have violated open meetings law. Things are so hot there right now, half of the council just walked out of a meeting last night.
I'm going to call this Monday, April 24th, 2023 City Council meeting to order.
Before we get to the latest episode of Dacono Gone Wild, let's catch you up on where we've been. In February, the City Council honored the longtime city manager for decades of service to the city. Then in the same meeting,
I make a motion to terminate employment of the city manager effective immediately.
4 city council members voted to fire the city manager that night. Then citizens collected enough signatures to recall 2 of them. That recall election will happen in late June. Monday night, city council was voting to hire a special attorney to manage that election.
This is just pure stalling.
Yeah, I'm going to move to approve
Not
resolution
stalling. It's like,
2340.
you're just trying to
Approving a
roughshod
legal
us so that we
services
don't
agreement
shut
for
up and
special
sit up and do
counsel in
what you want
connection
us
with
to
the
do.
June 27th,
It's not going to
2023
happen.
recall election.
Everybody was talking over everybody, prompting Mayor Adam Moorhead to bang the gavel.
Yes.
First time ever.
Then things got hot.
I can make a second. I can make a motion. I'm a member of this council. I'm also the mayor, but I'm also a member of this council.
Why don't you start acting like a mayor?
At issue here is whether the two members of council who are being recalled can vote no on the city spending money on that recall election.
Now we have a motion to adjourn that was made and seconded, and you won't silence me with your little hammer, okay?
I can tell, Kathy.
You can try.
The four contrary council members voted to leave, first with words,
I'm not voting. I'm out.
then with feet.
Citizens of Dacono, your
I just want to
king
vote whether
has
I can
spoken.
hire an attorney.
They didn't get a chance to appoint a special attorney to handle another matter. A CBI investigation shows evidence those four council members violated open meetings laws, gathering outside of a public forum to discuss the firing of the city manager and again to collect signatures on their own petition opposing the recall. The three remaining council members had no choice but to just call it a night.
I'm not staying here all night.
City Council is supposed to hold that hearing on whether to sanction those four members of council over that investigation. But right now, Dacono doesn't have any legal representation for that. City attorney resigned earlier this month. It is a mess. We will keep an eye on what happens there. Election workers across the state are still dealing with conspiracies about the 2020 election.
It unfortunately has launched this whole new set of grifters.
So how are they preparing for 2024? And one person's trash is another person's treasure. Denver Waste Management crews welcome a special guest along for the ride. Next. Denver's runoff elections are just over a month away to be decided on June 6th. One of the races for City Council District 9, where incumbent Candy Cidabaca is facing challenger Darrell Watson. Last month, Cidabaca was one of the subjects of a complaint accusing her of campaign finance violations that was filed by Quan Atlas, a District 9 candidate who didn't make the runoff. Atlas claimed that Cidabaca, mayoral candidate Lisa Calderon, and a slate of other progressives had shared resources provided by third-party groups, including unreported polling information. Denver Elections dismissed that complaint yesterday on the grounds that it wasn't timely and it failed to include specific facts, making it too vague. The hearing officer called the case threadbare. In a statement today, Calderon called the complaint a, quote, political hit job against progressive women of color. The resolution comes a bit too late for Calderon. She ended up in third in the mayor's race, just short of the runoff there. President Joe Biden formally announced his re-election campaign today, setting up a potential rematch with former President Donald Trump. It's not necessarily welcome news for the elections workers dealing with conspiracies and threats lingering from 2020.
The current state hasn't changed much from where we've been over the last few years. We are still dealing with a lot of mis and disinformation out there.
Matt Crane's the executive director of Colorado's County Clerks Association and a former Republican clerk in Arapahoe County. He says Trump's loss in 2020 jump-started a massive turnover in elections officials and volunteers as clerks' offices fielded constant conspiracies, even threats. Now they're training a new crop of election workers for a potential Biden-Trump rematch and continued conspiracies, while election deniers continue to hold on to power in the state GOP. Dave Williams, the new head of the Colorado Republican Party, still claims that the 2020 election was stolen. He also told us last month he offered one of Colorado's most prominent election deniers, former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, an election integrity role with the party.
And I could go on forever about their plans for election integrity and actually how they make our elections less accurate and less secure. But hey, they'll take your money to have you come talk to their group to spread the garbage. I think people are starting to walk away from that with somewhat of an open mind. And it's that opportunity group that we want to reach, invite in, come learn what really happens.
Election officials are asking the state to pitch in some extra funding to cover election costs in 2024, reimbursing each county as much as 45% for things like election integrity education and increased security. It's part of an election bill still working its way through the House. A Denver teen and her family fulfill a lifelong wish with some help.
I could do a trip, I could do anything in the world for her, but I can't make her the trash professional for the day.
And it's also a gift for professionals whose work often gets taken for granted. If you had one wish, what would it be? A vacation? Riches? Meeting a celebrity? Well, there's a teenager in Denver whose lifelong dream may not be everyone's pick of the litter. Our Byron Reed explains.
Yes!
It's not a typical request you would hear from a teenager.
She's been ready since 6:30 for an 8 o'clock pickup.
But today, 17-year-old Brett Moss is living out her childhood dream.
Since she was a very, very small child, has been obsessed with the trash truck.
Brett spent the day riding in a garbage truck and collecting trash with Waste Connections of Colorado. And even though the request is unique as the job itself, it's part of her wish granted by Make-A-Wish Colorado.
And to come alongside them, bring them joy, bring them strength, and really honor and celebrate them and have their one true wish come true is really special.
She's very, very excited. She's very thankful, and she loves everyone here.
Her mom, Kalisha LaFrance, says at about 18 months old, her daughter Brett was diagnosed with a rare form of epilepsy.
She is terminally ill because these seizures are very complex. She actually has a very hard time with them.
Kalisha says even though her daughter's wish isn't traditional, it's these moments that she's grateful for.
You know, I've lost Brett once before, and she's a miracle. You know, they helped, they got her back, and, you know, she's here today. But it's probably the hardest thing that any parent would ever go through.
Serving the community is something that we do every day. It's amazing to be able to, you know, work with an individual like Brett who appreciates that to the point where she could be doing anything in the world, but she's doing this with us.
This group hopes Brett's experience of collecting trash fills her with joy.
This little girl has been more excited over the last week than I've ever seen in her entire life.
And is at least one day not wasted on worrying about tomorrow.
I didn't know so many people cared, you know? And whenever we get this moment, and it helps everyone, you know, the whole entire family, I believe.
For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
Brett's wish day will end at the Front Range landfill, where she'll finally get to see what happens to the trash the garbage trucks pick up every week. We'll finish with your feedback on my attempt at an SNL reference next. Finish with your feedback now. Blame Meh for Everything on Twitter says, the not-so-subtle Stefan reference on Next Without Kyle Clark tonight was 100% quality television. 10 out of 10 would laugh and pay attention to the Dacono City Council silliness again. I hope you do pay attention for it. Anytime somebody calls a gavel a silly hammer, we've got to laugh about it a little bit. There is interesting stuff going on there. We'll be paying a lot of attention to it. Go Nuggets, go Avs. Kyle's back tomorrow. I'll see you next time.